Hello everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Arthur and I'm part of the AWS Cloud Economics team. We are a global team and our mission is to work with customers and make sure that they are paying only for what they need on AWS. Today, we're going to do a hands-on webinar. So we are going to cover the basics of cost management on AWS. The first part of the webinar is going to be covering about how you can monitor your costs. What are the native tools AWS offers you so you can do a solid cost management on your environment? And we're also going to be covering some of the tools, again, native tools that you don't need to pay anything additionally to AWS in order to get good insights to cost reduction. Before we start, I would like to ask you guys a couple of questions. Scott, can we go to the first poll? Tell me, from the people that are listening, do you know how much your bill was last month? This is a good indicator of how much of cost awareness your company and your environment has today. Interesting results so far. So we have a kind of a breakdown. A lot of people kind of know exactly what it was. Some people has an estimation around it, but also kind of the biggest part of the team still trying to figure it out. Okay. So let's go to a second poll now. So normally when we're doing this kind of presentation, I ask customers, if they know how much they pay last month, and also if they know how much they're paying this month. So after, do you have an estimation of how much you're going to be your bill in the end of September? Normally, since the last month already passed, it's kind of, not easy, but you can pretty much know how much your bill was, but actually estimating how much the bill will be is a little harder depending on how your process is today. Cool. Yeah, so that's correlates to a lot of some of the presentations we do. So kind of half and half people understand how much the bill was last month, but less people actually know how much the bill is going to be until the end of this month. Okay, cool. So today, this lab is going to be broken down. I'm going to do a quick introduction on cost management so we kind of understand the levers, how we do it, and understands better how do you do this within your organization, how you create a cost awareness. Everyone is responsible for costs in your side of the organization. And we have 5 labs planned for today. Don't worry, those are not dependent. So if you missed one or the second one, you can pretty much move to the other ones. Only the last lab, which we're going to play with the curve file, you'll know what it is in a minute. It requires that you already have this curve file created. If you don't have, that's fine. I will teach you how to do it now. And if you don't have it, you can pretty much connect to this webinar later and try to do it in your own pace. Okay, we're going to have some best practices and a Q&A in the end. In order to leverage this webinar, I recommend you to be trying to, as the same way that you're watching it, try to play with your own account. So log it in and try to replicate the steps that I'm doing. I'll try to be very paced and slowly so you can easily replicate those. We also have a team of moderators on the chat window that can be able to answer your questions as we move along. Those are people that work with the most complex AWS customers today only on cost management. So make sure to leverage the knowledge and ask the questions you need. So AWS has been helping customers migrate to the cloud over more than 13 years now. And this is the Cloud Value Framework. This is a framework that we created after doing hundreds of business cases around the world. So what we observed with those customers doing those migrations is that the benefits of the cloud go beyond only cost. So going to each one of the pillars, for the first one, the cost reduction or cost savings or the total cost of ownership, that corresponds to how much money customers are saving when they migrate to AWS. An IDC study of 2018 estimates that on average, customers are saving 51% when migrating to AWS. The staff productivity represents tasks and activities that were either eliminated or reduced when customers migrated to the cloud. That same IDC study estimates that IT staff are saving or are being more productive with 61% more time. In terms of operational resilience, that corresponds to reduction of unplanned downtime and the increase of high availability of your environment when migrating to the cloud. A Nucleus study that followed close to 200 customers found that they were reducing the unplanned downtime on around 32%. And finally, business agility. So that same IDC study estimated that from the overall savings of moving to AWS, 47% corresponds to business agility. So that is how faster your company is to react and launch new features or a faster go-to-market. AWS is all about long term. And as we grow and as we increase our economies of scale, we pass along this to customers in the form of more than 70 price reductions since 2006. A good example of this is that if you look at the M5 instance, this is the newer generation instance, and this is more performatic, and it's cheaper than the old version, the M4 instance. So without doing anything, you could be gradually saving money as you're using AWS. Of course, you don't need to wait on AWS to be saving money. You're pretty capable of doing yourself, designing for costs on your environment. And one quick way to do that is preparing your environment to leverage the elasticity of the cloud. So unlikely the traditional environment where you need to forecast capacity for the future, for what the business attainments your company is aiming for, or better improving forecasting or capacity planning, or either keeping resources that you don't need it anymore. On the cloud, you only need to launch what you need, so pay for only what you need. But how does that look from a financial, procurement, and IT perspective? So let's go to a third poll here very quickly. So today, where do you see it in your organization? Are you an IT person that is being asked to track and deliver more insights around AWS cost? Are you a financial person that your organization is using AWS and you're trying to improve predictability and understand better this concept? So let us know where you are sitting today. Okay, most of the team today is part of an IT team that interacts regularly with finance. Okay, that's pretty common. So moving along, when you go back, the traditional way of buying hardware or buying capacity, you have engineers as requesters. So based on a business demand, let's say I increased number of customer acquisition or increased revenue target, engineers will tell the company what they need in terms of hardware and software to attain that. After that is defined, finance and procurement teams, we work with that request with vendors to buy that capacity, to buy the hardware. So from a financial perspective, this is a good model because it gives them control, predictability. They know exactly how much they will pay, when they're going to pay, so it gives them control. But from the business demands or the dynamics of the market, that may not be the best option because you have long procurement cycles, you have a high cost of failure. So if you bought something and you need to change your strategy, you already bought the hardware, so you need to do whatever you want to do with what you already purchased it. So long story short, that model helps you understand how much you have today in your organization, but not necessarily how much you should have in terms of minimize the cost to sustain your existing demand. So on a cloud model procurement process, you have engineers and finance team working together. So that's why I asked in the beginning which part of the table you're sitting, because when we look at customers, successful customers that manage to attain cost management, they have a very close communication between those two teams. Because you have instance procurement, so you have engineers not only being the requesters now, but they're also launching resources as they need. And at the same time, you have finance that they really need to have the predictability and forecasting over what is being launched, because they're taking care of the finance health of your company. So there needs to have some good communication between those two teams. So when we look at the most common causes of waste on the cloud, I'm not going to cover all the ones on the slide here, but basically think about permissions, right? So when you just start using the cloud, you can be, engineers can start launching resources and testing new service, whatever they need, but there is a cost associated to that. So if they, launching resources on regions they don't, supposed not to be using, or testing services that should be shut down and they're not being shut down later, that can generate additional cost that is not doing any good for your company. So permissions is a big part, the lack of permissions in other way, it's a big part of cloud waste today. Another part of this is when, so AWS offer more than 160 services today, and some of them have different pricing models. So if you take the compute capacity, for example, you're paying by the hour or by the second. If you go to DynamoDB, you're paid by the amount of reads and writes your database has. So understanding the nuances of those pricing models and how to leverage, optimizing them, that's, the lack of understanding on this part is also a way of generating cloud waste, meaning you can have a workload in the air that could, move to a reserved instance or a model that is cheaper, but since you don't have maybe a reserved instance purchase model at your company, or even maybe you don't know what an RI is, you're paying on demand for that, and that can generate an additional cost for you. So why can we just, why companies can just go back to the team, put everyone together in the room and say, hey guys, we just look at the bill today. We need to make this, we need to cut costs. We need to be more conscious about our usage on the cloud. Let's try harder. Let's try to turn out things we're not using. Normally when you have a business, problem like this, it's very common for companies to put everyone together and try harder, asking for good intentions, right? Good intentions doesn't work, because when you're asking for good intentions, you're not asking for a change, and people already have good intentions. So at Amazon, we're pretty common saying here, it's you need mechanisms, and mechanisms are a closed loop process. It's something with defined metrics that will help you understand if the change you were proposing is actually happening, and if it's not happening, why is that? There is a specific team that is not contributing to that. Is there a specific miss on the existing process? So that's why last year, after working with several customers that successfully managed to build their cost management strategy, AWS, we created what we call the Cloud Financial Management Framework, or the CFM framework. So this is kind of the steps or the areas, the pillars that you need to be aware of when it comes to cost management, your environment. So today at this hands-on lab, we're going to focus more on the first two pillars, which is the C and the saving part. But of course, we're going to have some things about the planning piece of it. So just to cover some of the pillars there, the C part is actually where most customers start on. So that's where you start to create cost awareness. So that's where you start to create cost allocation. That's where you start not looking at your bill as the overall monthly AWS bill, but broke down by business unit, team, service, area. So you get more detailed granularity about your bill, and you can understand why that is happening. Okay? So it's all about cost tracking, monitoring, and also building metrics. Again, mechanisms. The planning, the saving part is the levers. So AWS has several levers you can pull up to save money. So here it's where you're going to understand what kind of things you need to do in terms of attaining, pulling which levers you should pull first, because they're codependent. For example, you can have a right sizing recommendation for your compute workloads, meaning you can receive a report that says how many instances they could be, change it, move it to a smaller size, and will save money because they're smaller. But on the other hand, you also have a reserved instance recommendation. If you don't know what a reserved instance is, don't worry, we're going to cover this very quickly. But it's kind of a coupon, a discount. You commit to a certain capacity, and AWS gives you a discount around it. So you have those two recommendations. So you need to decide if you're going to right size first and do the reserved instance afterwards. That way you maximize your overall savings. However, it can take some time from your engineers to actually do the downsize, because they need to turn off the instance, they need to test the new one. So this is not, for some workloads, especially in production, that may take some time. So time and the potential savings are the variable you're looking here to understand from your company where it stands now, where it should be your next step. Should you right size into the RI, or just move with the RI now, and then you can do the right sizing afterwards when you have more time. The planning part is a very popular topic with the finance team, because this is all about cost predictability. So what kind of budget and forecasts you have in place today in order to increase cost predictability. This is very important for finance because, again, they need to understand how much you're going to spend, not only until the end of this month, but for the next month, for the next year, because they need to build the budget and everything. So that's an important piece of the puzzle as well. And finally, the run part, which is, some people call it the FinOps. So this is how this is the glue that makes this all together work. So if you're a big company, you have people coming and going, What is the onboarding process of the new developers and engineers? Do they know which tags they need to use? What kind of permission they have? How do you make everything that we just discussed running? Okay, so normally what we see is a company with a central a central team dedicated to this topic, to cost management. Of course, depending how much you're spending today or how big your organization, you don't need to have a dedicated resource to it. But we see that this helps accelerate this whole process. So let's do a fourth poll there, Scott. So today at your company, do you have a dedicated resource to cover costs? Are you considering to do this? Interesting. Again, you don't need, it's not mandatory. We see that for a certain, large amount of customers, that helps accelerate and attain quick savings. But also we have plenty of cases where, IT engineers are dedicating part of their time to do this, especially if they can leverage a lot of automation, Lambda automation around, turning off on the underutilized resources, for example. Okay. Interesting. Let's cover quickly the pricing models we have on AWS. So for most customers, the biggest part of the spend is EC2, or the compute workloads. Compute workloads as RDS, as other services, Elasticsearch, Elasticsearch, Redshift. We have a couple of pricing models that, depending on your use, you can switch to a pricing model and save money. So thinking from AWS perspective, we have several regions and availability zones and almost 200 types of instances available for you to test it, right? Almost, instance for each type of workload out there. Our commitment with you is that when you launch resources, we're going to have the capacity for you, right? So the on-demand price means you have no commitment, you pay for what you use. So this is a very good model if you're prototyping, experimenting a new workload, a new kind of product and maybe feature, something that is dev on a QA stage. So you're just prototyping. You're kind of maybe comparing different instances to see which one performs better for your needs, or maybe it's something that you don't know if it's going to fly out. It's a test, it's a prototype, okay? So on that model, you're going to pay only for what you use. That's also the most expensive pricing model we have because there is no commitment. So AWS needs to invest a lot of time doing the forecasting and the capacity planning for this workload. Because again, you can launch resources in several regions and we need to have the capacity for you. However, if that workload is something that is going to be used for you, even if it's a dev environment, it's something that is going to be turned on 24/7 or for a lot of more than 65% of the hours in a month, maybe you should consider moving to a reserved instance. So a reserved instance is a coupon. You don't need to change your architecture. You don't need to relaunch the instance. You just go and commit in the console, you commit to AWS to that capacity, to that instance. So when you do that, AWS gives you a discount. Because again, to the economies of scale, when you do that, we buy hardware because you're giving this commitment to us, right? So we're able to pass along the economies of scale when you do that. And ROIs can be up to 75% cheaper than an on-demand usage. So definitely, if you have workloads like databases running on EC2, for example, or workloads that are going to be 24/7, definitely consider a ROI to start saving money there. And finally, we have Spot. So Spot is the available idle capacity we have on the availability zones. It's the same instance that you can launch on demand. You can launch as a Spot instance. It has no commitment. You can turn off whatever you need, and it can give 80 to 90% cheaper than on demand. So again, it's 80 to 90% cheaper than on demand, no commitment. However, it's idle capacity. So if we need that capacity back, if we have more customers asking for it, and the amount of capacity on that instance that you asked, on that availability zone that you asked is reducing, we'll take the instance back from you, and we receive a 2 minutes warning. So of course, you don't want to put your database in this pricing model. But for some workloads, if you're using containers, if you're using web applications, they're scaling up and down. There are several cases, reference cases, that you can consider this pricing model. It's becoming a very popular model with customers. So definitely consider that. We're not going to be covering Spot today, but definitely there's several materials available online, and you can ask questions to the chat team, to the moderator team, if you have any further questions on Spot. So Arise, over the time, we invested a lot of offering customers several flavors for Arise, right? So I'm not going to be covering all of them today. Again, there's several documentation online about it, but a quick spectrum of savings of Arise. So if you want to get more or less savings, given all the variables you have, you can see there. So for example, for payment options, so AWS offers you the no upfront and all upfront model, meaning you don't need to upfront any capital to us if you want to do an RI, but if you do, you're going to have a little bit more savings. Same thing with convertible. So with the time, customers were asking us they wanted to commit with RIs, but in the same way, they want to have more flexibility. So we launched the convertible reserved instance, which allows you to, during the contract period, so 1 year period, for example, you can switch that instance, whatever you want. So you can change OS, you can change pretty much everything of the instance except the region. So if you launch that, if you bought the RI on Virginia, you need to keep that commitment, that lease in Virginia, okay? So that gives you a quick idea over where you can attain more savings and how this, the variables, the attributes of the RI will impact how much savings you're getting. Another important piece of this puzzle is cost allocation, right? So here there are two main services or main approaches that you should be able to balance to have a good view over, how your bill is today, how each service or each team is consuming the resources. So one way the companies are doing is if you have a large organization with several AWS IDs or AWS accounts, is break them down by product, by area, by cost center, you name it. So build this strategy and leverage AWS organizations, because when you're checking the billing files, they all will be break down by linked accounts. So that means that if you have, let's say, product A account and product B account, if you know how much each one of them are costing, it's very easy to just filter out the cost per linked account, and you can see how much each one of them is spending, right? So that's one approach. Requires you, of course, to upfront know how it's going to be the structure, and that's one way of doing this. Another way is to leverage tags. Actually, my recommendation is to leverage both to have a good balance between them. So not only do the AWS organization structure, for example, here you're breaking down by unit, but also within the accounts, you have certain tags enabled that will help you understand the nuances. So for example, you may have product A, an account for product A, and inside the product A account, you may have dev and production workload. So that can be done with tags. So you can tag AWS resources. But that's a good approach. And of course, there are some examples of tags over there. Again, those are tags related to cost management, not technical tags. So this is a good table if you're looking for ideas of how, which tags you should be using, which ones should be mandatory, which ones is just for your information and everything. Again, this presentation and the session will be, it's being recorded, so you can check this out later. So let's go to the first demo. So at AWS, you have several ways of looking at your bill, right? And you have the simple, aggregated ways like monthly reports, and you can get very deeply. You can get at a very granular level. So with this demo, or at least with this lab today, one of my objectives is to help you at least understand which one should you be using, okay? So we can go from the invoice PDF you have or the bills page on the billing console to the curve file, the cost using report, which will give you a very granular hourly level report. Okay, so let's go to the first demo here. Perfect. So this is my AWS account, and if you want to go to the AWS, in case you don't know where it is, you click on your user on the top right, and there is my billing dashboard. So if you go in there, you see, so this is an overview of my account. I'm not using that much. So you can see, how much was my last bill on the last month, how much is my current spending so far in September, and my forecasting. So this is how they expect, so how AWS is expecting my bill is going to be if I keep the same usage that I have so far. You also have a quick glimpse over the month-to-date data breakdown by service, how much I'm spending for each one of them. And here on the top left, where you have all the native tools that we're going to cover with the lab today, Cost Explorer and Budget, we have separate labs that are going to cover pretty soon. So right now, I want to focus first on the bills section. So if you go to the bill section, this is going to give you an overview. This is month to date because this is September, of course. But if I go to August, I can see pretty much my spending per service. And if I open one of the services, I can get a more view, a deeper view in terms of which region they are, if they were an RI usage, if they were on-demand usage, spot, EBS, okay? I don't have a lot of data transfer used here. It's under the free tier, so there is no cost in there. But if you open yours and you see some numbers in here, this is also a good way to understand from a data transfer perspective where your cost is coming from. It's data transfer out, it's inter-AZ traffic. So that gives you a quick understanding of at least, how your data transfer cost is being calculated. Of course, you can also, let's go back to September, you can also see this by account. So I have 3 accounts here on this setup. So I can pretty much see how much each account is spending. I have enough spending on production there, but you can see the breakdown there pretty quickly. And if you want to download this to a CSV table, that gives, I think, if you're a small organization, you're still growing, you don't want to spend a lot of time on cost management at this moment. You just want to have at least a quick glimpse. This is a quick report because you have monthly aggregated data. So you have, for example, for EC2 instances, how much you spent for the month. So this is a good, first, depends how simple your organization is, depends how kind of visibility you need. Maybe for the finance team, they just want to know how much each account spent per service in the entire month. That will do it. That will give us some information. What you don't have here, though, is tags. So if you're leveraging tags on your existing system today, you will not have this here. So you need to consider other options, right? But this is a good first moment of maturity in terms of a simple or more smaller environment. I also want to cover the cost allocation tags. So on the cost allocation tags, we're talking about how important tags and how important this is for your cost awareness environment. So if you don't have if you don't have tags enabled today, like you're not tagging your resources, or if you're starting to do it, don't forget that after you create a tag, you need to come here and activate it so you can start seeing on the bill. If you create a tag and you don't activate it, you're not going to be able to see that on Cost Explorer on the billing files. Okay. So again, don't forget, after you decided which tags to use and the tagging strategy, make sure to come here and activate it. And you need to do this if you have several linked accounts. You need to do it for each one of them. Okay. And finally, let's go to the cost and usage report. So this is the curve file or the cost and usage. This is going to be the most detailed, granular data point you can get on your bill. So this is kind of a phone bill version of your AWS bill. Okay. If you're looking for hourly information of your bill, if you're looking for resource ID information, meaning you want to know exactly which instance consumed an RI, for example, for chargeback purpose. So let's say one account, one business unit of your organization acquired a reserved instance, and you want to know exactly if they actually consumed the RI or if the RI is floating into another account. For those who don't know, AWS tries to maximize your savings. So if you bought an RI and you're not using it on that specific time, and you have linked accounts, that RI can flow or will flow to the other linked accounts. So what can happen is a business unit that bought an RI for some reason they're not using, and this discount is flowing to another team. So some companies, they want to track this to make sure that you're charging back the areas properly. So that's the kind of situation where you're looking for to use this file. So very detailed, I'm not going to say large environments, but if you want to have a very accurate tracking of your bill, this is the port you should enable and start using it. So the curve file, or again, the cost and usage report, let's create one together here. I already have, I already have 2 there created, but let's just do this together. So first you need to give it a name. So let's put, online tech talk. You want to enable the resource IDs, definitely, because this is going to, again, give you resource ID level of information, again, for chargeback purpose. You need to create a bucket. So the way this works is AWS will save this billing data on a bucket for you. So you need to, of course, create a bucket for it and give AWS permission to do so. So first, you can use existing bucket or create a new one. I'm going to use the one that I already have here in the region just to facilitate. You need to verify and accept this policy. Again, this will allow AWS to create this file for you there. You're going to see that this is not one big CSV file. So in the past, AWS has what we call the detailed billing report, or DBR. So that was a big CSV file that sits that used to sit on customers' S3 environment. Right now, we move it to the curve file. This one, instead of having one big CSV, you're going to have several parts of it in a JSON file that will tell you how to put them all together. Okay. So you need to specify a bucket for it, and also put a prefix. So I'll put curve file testing, for example. Of course, you want an hourly granularity. Create a new report. And in terms of the report integration or the format here, my recommendation is for you to click on the Amazon Athena. So that will create a file that is on the Parquet format. So that will make it easier for you to use Athena and SQL to extract data from it. Okay. So of course you're open to do the format you want, but for the lab today and for upcoming sessions, I strongly recommend you to create under a Parquet format. Click next. So I'm not going to move along. I already have 2 files created, but you should be able to review and complete and create your curve file. If you're doing this for the first time, it takes around a day or so for you to have the file created. Don't worry, if you're creating now on October, what day is today, 24, this file will bring information since September 1st. So yeah, again, do it now, because there is no way you can get this back data, so from past months, okay? So do it now so you can start getting some traction and trend analysis for your bill. But it takes around a day or so for you to see this file for the first time. So for the lab number 5 here today, you'll not be able to replicate that because you don't have the curve file. But again, this is recorded. You can come back here at your own pace and try to run the queries you're going to run there, okay? So let's come back to the presentation. So that was a quick overview over the cost, the billing console, right? And if you want to know, okay, thanks, Arthur, but I'm still not clear, which file, which report should I use, right? We're going to do a cost explorer now, so maybe that will be easier for you to understand. But a quick glimpse is the bills report, or the billing dashboard that I just showed you, the Excel file. It gives you monthly information. You have the fields in there, so account ID, service. You have, I think, a good, first level of control in terms of your bill in there. It's very good for simple financial controls. If your organization is asking for it, it's starting to go on this post, and it's the output. It's a CV or CSV or a PDF. Cost Explorer will give you the same data fields that you have on the bills, plus tags and usage types. So you have more detailed information in there. The output is the UI, the Cost Explorer UI. They're going to see now on the second lab, and you also can extract all this to the CSV. So it's a very common practice for customers to be using Cost Explorer, downloading the CSV, and putting on their own financial internal reports. Okay, it's also good. Cost Explorer is also good if you're doing forecasting, budget planning for your organization. And finally, the curve file will give you all the data plus resource ID, and the granularity will be on an hourly basis. So yeah, pretty detailed data. If you wanna, the deliverable is on S3, so you need to set it up so how you can actually read the file, but that will give you the best and the most granular information over your bill. So Cost Explorer. So Cost Explorer today is one important thing about Cost Explorer is it runs on a curve file. So even if you didn't create a curve file at your account, everything that you see on AWS is running on top of that file that we created for you. So the data that you see in there is the same that you see on the curve file, of course, but with not the same granularity. So you have the UI, we're going to see in a minute, and you can see their information over the last 12 months. You can see there on the monthly or daily information. And I think today is the most important tool you have in terms of cost management. There is no additional cost to use the Cost Explorer. So yeah, if you don't know it, definitely start using it. It's going to be very useful and give you quick information, quick glances about your account. You can do user access. So for example, if you have finance team asking for more information, you can create an IAM user for them with only billing console privileges, Cost Explorer privileges, and you can save reports in there. So they just go in there, get the report they need, download it, and move along with the filing, the reporting they need. Okay. A quick, so that's just a quick overview of Cost Explorer. So you see there, you have cost and usage lines in there. You have filters on the left. So this is for EC2 running costs. You can group that by, instance type, which is the case here, but you can group by purchase type, account ID, regions. We're going to see that in a minute. You have the period that you want to analyze. Again, you can do monthly or daily. You have the filters on the right, so you can remove specific services if you don't need to, or if you want to exclude RI. Let's say you bought an RI, an upfront RI, you want to remove that money, that upfront money for your analysis, you also can do that. You have some advanced options here. So for example, amortization. If you want to have, AWS offers you RI amortization reports as well. So again, important for finance teams. And finally, you can download the CSV, and also there is an API available that you can use to get all this information. So let's go to the demo. So if you want to go to Cost Explorer, first thing, just type Cost Explorer here. I think it's the simplest way. I just created this shortcut for me here, but just go to the find service Cost Explorer. If you don't have cost enable, you need to launch it. You can also go from the billing console that we just saw it, Cost Explorer launch. It's going to show enable. If you never use it, it's going to ask you to enable. If you're using, you're probably seeing a screen similar to the one that I'm showing now. So before we go to the reports, this is a quick overview of your bill, right? So it shows, for example, the daily cost over the last 2 months, month-to-date cost, how much this is, up month over month. It shows some trends. So for example, here it's showing that my ELB costs are up, 80% this month. It's only $10, so maybe it's fine. It shows for specific instances. So this is going for outliers detection. So if you have a specific, if I just started using a new service, of course you're going to see here. But if you're, a stable workload and there's something, out of the chart here, that will help you understand what it is. And if you click here, it's going to bring you to a Cost Explorer report showing exactly this number here. Okay, you have some usage as well here in terms of how much your costs per region, for example, if they're up or down, how they're stable, and you have some suggestions for reservations here. So this is a quick overview of the tool, right? So let's go to the magnifying glass here on the left and go to cost and usage. So I'm going to show first 2 or 3 very simple reports, and then I move to some maybe more advanced ones, but some reports that I really like. I think gives you a very good overview of your bill. So the first one, the default one that you see here, this is the last 6 months of my usage, and it's broke down by service. So you can see here that it's grouped by service. Each one is color coded. So you can see that my biggest spend is workspace, followed by EC2 instance, Elasticsearch, ELBs, Glue, and you group the others on this green bar. If you want to know what the green bar is, you can scroll down here and get more information, or you can download the file if you want. Another thing you can do here is move to so let's put to a more recent workload. So I want to put, July, August, and September month to date. And I want to see that on a daily basis, right? So you can see, well, not very good, right? Because the workspace spend, it's a one single charge in the beginning of the month. So let me try to remove workspaces from here so I can get a better picture of my bill. So workspaces, exclude. Still have, maybe it's one of the RIs that I bought or something that I found. So it's not good in terms of the scale here. Yeah, so that will help a little bit. So that's going to show me on a daily basis the cost per service that I have for this environment. And you can see how in September I started to launch more things, especially RDS cluster. So you see, and it's an elastic one. So you can see that, for example, on those 2 days, it was turned off. September 15 and September 14. So I guess those were a weekend or something. And yeah, so this gives you, for at least from a service perspective, cost per day. You can also, for example, let's do tags. So I have a tag here which is project. So let's see how it goes. So if I group that for tags, you can see that in July I was not doing so much of a good job in terms of tagging. So the the purple part here, it's nodes. So those are resources that were not tagged. Right? And as we start in September, I started to do a better job. So you see that the purple part is drastically reduced, and now I can see, for each one of the processes that I have, how much they're spending. We also have this not Bitcoin mining, which is funny. If I want to dive deep down later, I can filter this and understand, for example, okay, which service is under this tagging, who launched this, if I have CloudTrail enabled, and etc. So we saw cost per service, we saw cost per tags. You can also do the same thing. Let's do month to date, for example, to keep it simple. I can do this as well for region. So if I want to see which regions I'm spending more, this also helps us understand. Of course, we have some services that will be global, so they will show as global or known. Some services, they also are non-region specific, like support, for example, so they will show here as a non-region part. But you can see at least how is the breakdown by regions. Okay, move workspace here. Okay, so let's do an example now with one report that I really like it with its S3. So on this account, I don't have much of an S3 usage, but if you do, this is probably going to be useful for you. So first thing is I'm going to do a month-to-date report. So select month-to-date here on the top left. Daily granularity. Filter only this S3 service, for example. And my recommendation is to group by API operation. So that will show you how much your S3 cost or how much your S3 usage is leveraging other storage classes. So for those who don't know, S3 offers several storage classes: S3 standard, S3 frequent access, intelligent tiering, and others, Glacier. So this is a good option. If depending on how you're using your objects, you can save money. So S3 frequent access, for example, this is 45% cheaper than S3 standard storage. So if you have objects in S3, they're not being constantly accessed, that may be a good idea to move them to the frequent access mode. If you don't know how to find those, you have a big, a lot of objects in there, you don't know which ones that you should move to this class. We launched last reInvent the S3 intelligent tiering that you can move to this class, and AWS will analyze your usage, and if you're not accessing the object that much, we will change automatically for infrequent access, so you pay the infrequent access price, but which is cheaper, of course. But if you if you need it to start using that object more and need to come back to the standard storage one, we'll move it back, and then you pay. So you only pay the standard usage when you actually need that. So I think it's a nice way to automate that. We also have S3 analytics that you can enable. It will analyze your S3 usage, and it will recommend lifecycle policy. So we recommend to you some rules to say, for each object, if it doesn't change it, if it's stable like that, move to frequent access, move to Glacier. So you can create a whole logic in there. So this report will show you exactly, of course, this is cost. So again, I'm not spending too much per day on S3, but if you are, this is going to show you a quick glimpse, at least, how much is your standard storage per day. And if you can move to those other storage classes, you definitely want to be able to, start using the things that I just described to try to reduce your S3 cost. So this is one report that I really like it. Another one that I think I'm a big fan is the monthly EC2 running hours. So if you go to the top one, this is a pre-built report. So monthly EC2 running hours. If you go there, you see that Cost Explorer is now a little different. You see two columns. The top one is cost, the bottom one is usage, so it's hours. And it's filtering only for running hours for EC2. So here we are only seeing EC2 usage, okay? So what I like to do with this report to make it more sense to me, I'm going to get a longer period. So I'm going to get 1 year of data, okay? I'm going to put this to daily usage. Okay, so again, this is cost. You can see there was a spike here, and below here it's usage, right? And I want to break this down by purchase option. So I want to see, for example, okay, for my EC2 hours, what is an RI, what is a spot, and what is on demand. So you can see that in the past, I was using a lot of spot instances. So that's, the light green there. So you see there is a cost involved in there. And the usage was, most of the cost was related to spot. And as I start launching on demand, you see a spike on the cost. And the same time that I've launched on demand, I turn it off some of the spot instances. So you can see, all this flow happening onto your account. And what I like to do is, I don't have any RIs here at the moment. I just bought a couple of them in September. But this is interesting because if you want to, so for example, if you have financial stakeholders at your company now, and you want to explain to them, let's say if you go to 1 year back on your account and you bought a rise, you're not new to this topic, so you already did some things to try to reduce your bill. How can you show to this non-AWS, people that you're doing, at least that you're trying to optimize the cost, or that you at least did something that managed to reduce cost. So this kind of report, if you divide, I like to divide the cost by the number of hours, so you can get an average compute cost. So again, if you increase the array coverage, you probably will see this cost going down. So that's a nice chart that you can build for them and show, okay, over the past 12 months, my average EC2 cost dropped, hourly cost dropped for, 12 cents to 8 cents. So that's something that, again, people that are not super technical will understand that at least you're scaling up, or at least you're saving some money. Of course, if you didn't buy a rise, if you launched more resources, depending, this number can be going up or down. So you need to, of course, interpret this data first. But I think this is a nice way of analyzing your environment. Again, EC2 is normally a big part of the bill. So I think this is a nice way to starting. If you have a rise, my recommendation is on this advanced option here, move it to net amortized costs. So that if you have a rise, let's say you bought an all upfront array last year, if you do that and you don't put the amortized cost, you see a spike on the cost here, and then everything will go down magically because, again, you pay for that instance last year, you pay for that list 1 year ago, for example. So you're going to have a spike on the hourly cost, and then it's going to go down. So you want to amortize the RI cost. You want to get, let's say you did an all upfront or partial upfront. You want to, you want the calculation to get only, the amount of money that you spent and divide it equally by the period you're analyzing it. So that will give you a more accurate information over how much is actually your average EC2 cost. Okay, so that's one report. I really like it. Another one that I think it's nice is, let's go, I think I saved it here. So daily EC2 cost. This is a nice one as well because we can do this together, but this is going to give you from on-demand usage. So how do I build that? So if you first, let's do this together. Again, EC2 is a big part of the bill of most customers today. So you want to keep a close look to it. So the first thing is EC2, if you see you have EC2, if you filter here on the service, you have EC2 instances, you have EC2 orders. EC2 orders corresponds to EBS and data transfer mainly, and also the RI purchases that you may do. So those two services combined, so those two will give you the overall part of your bill normally, and you want to track them on a daily basis, for example. So let's filter them. Let's try to focus on demand only. So if you go to charge type, you can see, sorry, not charge type. If you want to show more filters, I want to see only on demand usage for my purchasing option. Okay, cool. And I want to see that online per day. So that will give you, I think, a good information, a good view over, okay, what is your daily EC2 cost, and if it's mostly, it's mostly EC2 instance, or if it's mostly EC2 order. So of course, again, I don't have a lot of data transfer costs here. Most of my EC2 usage here is EBS, so it's not super significant at this moment. But for more, real workloads, you probably will see this chart, this light green here, more predominant. So yeah, so that's I think a good way to see it. And you can also, of course, break down by usage type. Here. So that will show you which kind of instance. Let me go back to the lines. So that will give you information. So for example, I know that the box usage of the T2 large, so the instance T2 large, this is my mostly predominant, this is the higher EC2 cost on demand that I have on a daily basis. Sorry, this is monthly. Let me come back to daily. Yeah, and you can also see the other. You can see in the same report not only the instances, but you can also see Elastic IP, EBS. Again, you can all download this from this CSV. You can have more details here. So yeah, so I think this is a nice, interesting report. And just finalize this first part of the demo of the Cost Explorer. We also have forecasting here. So yeah, if you're at the time of the year that you need to forecast, you're working with finance to forecast how much is going to be your bill on the next year, for example, what you can do here is on the period, you can select, let's see, year to date, and I want to do a forecast for the next 3 months. So again, year to date and 3 months, you select those two boxes, apply. When you do that, when you enable forecasting, AWS will today we can't forecast by the group by function. So when you click OK on this box, you're going to see only overall cost, AWS cost. You see a month-to-date estimation, and you're going to see the next month's estimation, right? Again, you can also do that for the daily view if you want. I'm not going to do it because it's a big period here. The logic of this forecast improved over the past years. So right now, if you have a very stable environment as mine, but in the last month or in the last days or weeks, you started to use more, the forecast will give a higher weight to the most recent usage. So you see that the September, we're going the end of the September, so that's why the range of error here is very small. But you can see that the following months of October, November, and December, they already take into consideration the spike that I had in September. So you can pretty much have a good forecasting over how much will be you're spending over the last over the future. You can do that for end of month to 3 months and 12 months. But if you need, so let's say, okay, but I really need to group this by, I really need to group this by project, for example. Again, if you try to group by here, you lose this forecasting data. So a way that you can do that, a workaround you can do around that is, for example, let's say I want to do a forecasting for my tag project. Let's say I want to do this for the project Euler. So I select, or for all my projects, let's say beta and Euler, okay? If I apply this, you have a new forecast now, take into consideration only those two services, okay, sorry, these two tags. So I know depending on how much you need to do, that's maybe not ideal for you to be creating this manually, each one of them. That's why we have the API. You can do that over the API if you need to do a lot of forecasting here. But that's also, I think, a workaround for you today to have at least a quick glimpse of what will be your forecasting. Let's go back to the presentation now. Let's cover a little bit of reserved instances, or how you can track, how you can buy, and how you can reserve and track your reserved instance at the console today. So yeah, so we talked about Cost Explorer real quickly. It's a good way for you to track your costs. Don't need to pay any additional cost to it. Daily and monthly information. Build in with a forecasting. Again, you can create several IAM users and give this to finance so they can use and extract their own reporting. I think it's a pretty user-friendly tool. So yeah. Let's go to RI utilization. So as we speak, as I talk to you, EC2 is a big part of the spending today, and one of the quickest way to save money is to move with an RI. Again, you don't need to change the architecture, you don't need to relaunch the instance, you just commit to it, right? You just commit to that instance, and you get a discount around that. So together with buying the RI, you also want to track the utilization, right? So let's go back to Cost Explorer, and I'll show you how we can do RI tracking or management when you're using Cost Explorer. So on the pre-built reports of Cost Explorer, you see some of the ones that we just play around here. You also have 2 reserved instance reports. Let's go first to the coverage one. So the RI coverage one, that will show for EC2 what is my RI coverage. RI coverage means what is the amount of EC2 hours running RIs divided by the total number of EC2 RIs and on demand. So it's not counting spot usage, for example. So that's your coverage. That's what we call the RI coverage of customers, okay? So if you look at the last 3 months, which is the default report, it's going to see, at least for me, a very small coverage, 3%, because I didn't have any RIs until mid-August. Okay, but on mid-August I bought some, so you see an increased trend here. You can do the same for all the services. They are RI compatible. So for example, Redshift, RDS, Elastic Cache, and Elasticsearch. If I go to RDS, I didn't have any RDS at this stage, only in the end of August. So you see here there is a small 0 here because I was not, again, small line here because I was not using at that time. Let's get month to data information. So as the same way that we did for the cost reports, let's get month to data information. So on RDS, I have some usage of RDS, on-demand usage, but I have no RI for RDS. So that's why it's showing a 0, no coverage. And that's my on-demand cost. So it can be perceived that this is the potential, this is how much money I'm paying on demand. And if I'm planning to keep this RDS cluster, maybe that can be turned into RI and I can save more money around it. But let's go back to the EC2 piece now. So if I keep month to date, EC2, you can see my coverage here. And this is on a daily information. You can move to monthly if you want, but I think for RI coverage, daily, I think is the best one. And here you can see that it's varying, right? Because what happens is I bought an RI and I'm turning it off. And AWS is not be able to match to any other instance. So that's why you see the coverage going up and down, up and down. Ideally, you want this coverage to be, if you're growing with your environment, right? You should have a proper mechanism to, as your organization grows, you're acquiring more reserved instances. But that kind of shows, what is my coverage. If I had to, to answer, yeah, my RI coverage today is 26%, meaning 26% of my EC2 hours today are covered by an RI. Great. So this is coverage. Let's see utilization. So utilization is, okay, from the RIs that I have, how many I'm actually, using it, right? So let's go again to month to date information, EC2 again. So if you are in this screen at your account, I'm curious to see how this is going up to you. But just quickly to understand the numbers. First, the first number that you see here, so in my case, $24.86, this is on-demand usage. So for the RIs that I have, if I didn't have RIs, how much would I have paid? So 24 bucks. The effective reservation cost, this is how much I'm paying. So I'm paying 31 bucks. So actually I'm paying more because I'm not using my RIs fully. You see that I'm using them and then I turn off the instance. So I'm actually losing money here. So that's a good report to show if the RIs that you bought were actually delivering any result, any savings or not. So if you compare here 24 against 31, I'm actually paying more to have the RIs because I'm not using. So the total net savings you see is a negative number. It's minus $7. Okay? And the total potential savings, that was in case, let's say if I were to be using fully my RIs, that was my potential savings. Okay? So you can pretty much see the gap between, okay, this is how much money I could have saved, this is how much money I'm not saving, and since I have a negative total net savings, this is adding up to my potential savings. Okay, so what do I do? How do I know? How to fix that, right? I don't want to lose money. So of course you can download this SV here and get more information. But just quickly, if you want to order them by net savings here. So when you go to the table below here, make sure you order them by the net savings. So that will show you the biggest waste first. So I have a T2 Nano on the payer account that has no utilization. Okay, so this is the amount of hours that I haven't used it. This is month to date, so that's why you have 528 hours. That's how much money I lost. Okay, I mean it's a small environment, not a lot of money, but maybe in your account is showing a different number here. So you want to prioritize where you want to, maximize your RI utilization. So that will give you a good information. And if you want to know more information about your RI, if you open this up, you're going to be able to see where you bought it, the instance reservation ID, if it's a convertible or not. So this is a Windows instance, no upfront, but it's convertible. So it's good news because I can convert this instance to something that I'm actually using it and start, maximizing or start at least leveraging this saving. So that will be my, my action plan for me is, since this is a convertible RI, I should act on this modification to make sure that I'm saving this money, right? If you go to the second one here, the T2 Nano, so I am using part of this reservation, but not fully. So I'm still getting, I'm getting more unused hours than actually used hours. So that's why I'm getting a negative saving, right? And finally, for the T3 Nano here, I'm using this fully. So I have, $1.37 as saving. Okay. So let's go back to the presentation. So let's do a quick, if you just did the exercise with me, let's do a quick poll. Tell me, what is your reservation today? Okay, so most people are not using reserved instance today. I hope with the conversation today now that helps you leveraging this and at least start saving more money. Cool. Let's continue the presentation. So we have, if you want to know which reservations to buy, which RIs to acquire, can we move back to the sharing screen, please? So AWS Inside Cost Explorer, we started to offer no additional charge a right recommendation. So if you go to this target here on the bottom left, you see here a quick glimpse of the things that you can do to optimize your cost. So one of them is the reservation, which arise you should buy. So let's go to EC2 here. So what this tool is doing is analyzing your usage, your on-demand usage, and saying, well, if you keep the same usage that I see over the last 30 days, that's the arise you should acquire, and that's how much money you can save. So that's an arise recommendation out of the box without any additional cost. And here you can play with all the arise scenarios. You can do 1 year and 3 year. You can do convertibles, for example, if you want. You want to do partial upfront. If you want to analyze, only the last 7 days. If you want to do 60 days. So here it's a good way for you to play with different scenarios. You can also do that per linked account. So yeah, for most people that are not using Arise today, if you want to know, okay, which Arise should I acquire, that's a good tool for you to start testing it. Again, you can also download the CSV here and further analyze it. And you also can see that per service, RDS, Elastic Cache, and everything else, okay? So just moving back to the presentation so we can keep on time. Going to the next labs. Resource optimization. This is something that we launched a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's a very interesting insight on your view as well. So if we can go back to the demo again. So in terms of coming back to the small targets that you see here on the left, the recommendations. So we talked about the RI recommendations here. Of course, you also want to check if you don't have this part here enabled, so the resource optimization. Enable it, takes around a day or so for you to get the first recommendation. But what this part will do, again, no additional cost here, it's going to analyze the usage of your EC2 resources, CPU, and propose smaller instance sizes so you can save money, right? So those are my instances today. You have 2 types of recommendations here. One, it's turn off idle instances. I don't have any idle instance, so there is no recommendation for idle. But if you have any workloads with less than 1% of CPU utilization over the last 14 days, you're going to see a recommendation from AWS here to consider turning off this resource. Since I don't have any resource on that configuration, I have, however, several resources that never passed it. So the logic here, it's everything that never passed 40% of CPU utilization. So you see the instances here, and there is a recommendation to downsize them. So if you want to see exactly what is the recommendation, so this is one of the instances. This is a T2 medium in Sydney. This is how much utilization of CPU it's having over the past 14 days. All the hours were on-demand hours, so this is nice because either if you have an array being used here, AWS will already do the calculation for you, so you don't need to worry about sizing an instance here and lose the array coverage you have for it. So here this is a fully on-demand instance. I'm not using that much, and I can save $21 if I move to a T2 small, 33 if I go to a T2 nano, and 32 if I go to a T2 micro, and we kind of trying to estimate the CPU usage you're going to have for those utilization. Again, if you keep the same mode for your workload. I think, again, this is no additional cost. I think this is a very nice to give you an idea on how to right size your environment. Ideally, if you want to maximize the savings, you want to right sizing first. So make sure you're launching the smallest instance possible and then moving to an array. Yeah, so this is if you haven't enabled that, that's okay. This is a new launch, I think, over the last 4 to 6 weeks. So definitely consider enabling that and looking for array recommendations. Sorry, right sizing recommendations. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. Thank you. So very important to all this that we're talking, that you have metrics around it. So what success looks like for your company. So for the things that we did on Cost Explorer, you can pretty much extract all the data that you see there on the left. So efficient metrics, average daily spend, forecast cost, untagged resources. So all these things you can extract from Cost Explorer. And customers, they kind of move to the right side of it, which is the value-based metrics. So combining the usage for a specific product by how many users you have on that product. So combining your own business metrics. So doing that, you can get information like cost per user, for example, that will help you understand, okay, as you're getting more users, are your cost per users stable, getting down, going up? So that gives you a very good a more insightful information of your bill instead of only looking at your monthly overall bill. Yeah, so those are some examples of information or metrics you can use. Again, you need to have mechanisms in place. I think the main difference of the right tab in there is that the right tab, you probably will need to combine AWS data with your own data. Number of costs per developer, for example, it's a very popular one. But yeah, this is something that you should definitely consider to have a better metric system in place. You also should be able to create some KPIs or some metrics. So this is an example of, again, everything here you can extract from Cost Explorer. So you can get opportunities to save. You can maybe put a benchmark in there. You can do this for each linked account you have, for example, each product team. So this is one way to do a cost-efficient metric report. And this is an example of a customer that during 3 years, so over the past 3 years, this customer increased 3 times the user base, and they launched more than 150 servers. And during this time, the cost per user had some variations. So when we started talking to them, they just did a first ROI purchase, so the cost per user dropped. As they launched more features, the cost per user increased. As they continue to optimize now on a per squad basis, so after they do the tags, they put, everyone is responsible for the cost. So each team has an own budget and they need to take care of how much they're spending. So they're working on this and managed to reduce the cost per user. As they launched new services, the cost was increased, and now they're doing right sizing. So I think this is a good metric to show the trend of your usage. So of course, if you're doing cost per user right now, if you don't have any trend, it's hard to say if it is good or bad. So try to start, a business metric that is relevant to you. Cost per user is a very popular one, and try to see it on a line, on a trend level, if that makes sense to your organization. Okay, let's talk about budgets now. So budgets, I think it's a great tool as well to give you more proactivity around your environment. So this is a tool also part of the Billing Console, the Cost Explorer suite. And here you can create several types of budgets and give some automation there. So let's go to the demo. I'm going to go back to my billing dashboard here. Awesome. So if I come here, if I go to budgets on the left, I have a couple of budgets created here. If you don't have any, don't worry. If you have, that's awesome. We have 3 main types of budgets you can create. You have cost budgets, usage budgets, and reservation budgets. Cost budgets are, of course, related to cost. So let's say you have a budget for a specific project, a specific bill, a specific service. So you can create that. We're going to do this in a minute. You can also do usage budget. So for example, amount of gigabytes transferred in a certain workload, and you can put a budget for it and be alerted when this number is above that. And reservations. So for example, for the RIs that I have, they're underutilized. I should create alarms here that send me an email in case a reservation it's under a certain utilization. So let's say below 80% of utilization, I wanted to be alerted when I'm underutilizing a reserved instance. So definitely, if you're buying a ride for the first time, after you do that, come here and create a reservation budget to alert you to make sure you're actually saving the money you expect to save when doing an ROI. But now let's create together a cost budget. Okay. So when you create a budget, you select the type of budget you want to do it. I'm going to do a cost one. Let's give you a name. So let's say untagged cost budget, for example. I want to track how much of untagged cost I have, for example. I want to do this in a monthly budget. You can do quarterly and annually. It's going to be a recurring one every month, for example. I can put an expiring one. Let's say this is only good until December. You can also do a fixed or a variable one. So this is a recent launch as well. You don't need to put, for example, $200 per month. You can put the monthly planning, and you can put a value for each one of the months in case you have a variable workload. Just to keep it simple, I'll keep a fixed one here. Let's say I want to track for the tag project how much is not tagged. So I'm going to select the no tag key. So all the resources that doesn't have a value for the project tag or untagged. So you see that as I select this, Cost Explorer is refreshing so I can have an idea of the trend. So for the last months, how much was the untagged? I can see that for September that number decreased. So I want to put a $200 threshold. So in the future, I am alerted when something like this is happening. Let's say one of my metrics, for example, to start improving my tagging strategies, actually to have tracking how much of untagged I have. After you select the logic, or at least the filters you want to select the alert option. You can be alerted by an actual cost when the actual cost surpasses the amount that you put it, or for a certain forecast. So for example, if you didn't pass the number yet, but if you keep using that, you're going to pass the $200 here, for example, AWS will alert you before that. So that's a way for you to be more proactive. Don't wait for something to pass the budget to act. I like a good strategy that I like to put in here that I want to share with you is I like to put actual cost, and I want to be alerted when this is in 70% of budget amount. And then you can put my email at mycompany.com, for example. You can create another alert here that says, okay, now I want to be alerted when it's 90% of the budget, so I can keep the same same email, and I create a further alert when it's above 100%, so when it actually passes the budget amount that I have. So when I do that, it's going to send an email to this user. It can be an email group, whatever you want to do it. Another option is to create an SNS topic, and this is good because you can subscribe it to Slack, like create a chatbot with Slack or Chime, and that will alert everyone when a certain budget is met. So confirm budget. I'm not going to create this, I already have other budgets, but if you went so far, just create it to see and test how the alarm is going to work on your end. So that's budget. Let's go back to the presentation. Thank you. So this is an example of alert that you receive over email. So this is one for cost. And this is another alert for array utilization. So just an example, you see you have links in there so you can click and they will open Cost Explorer and show to you what is happening. So pretty actionable. You have the integration with the chatbots that I think it's very nice to increase cost awareness. And one recent feature that I like is you can connect this with CloudFormation or Terraform. So if you're doing infrastructure as a code and you want to be able to already create budget alerts when you launch those resources, you can do it over there. So I think it's nice again to automate and give people control around costs. Let's go and talk about tagging. Tagging, it's important. Again, it's only the first step when it comes to cost allocation, right? There's some restrictions to tagging. So there are some services like support, for example, that you can't tag. So always be prepared to handle some untagged cost. You should try to aim, let's say 5% of my bill, 7% of my bill should be untagged, and try to create a logic around this untagged cost. We're going to break this equally. We're going to have a cost center only for untagged cost. Try to be prepared and build that. But of course, for most workloads, EC2, for example, that is taggable. So you probably need to aim to be have a proper tagging system in there. Tags, they don't back propagate. That means that if you don't have tags today and you start doing it now, that will not propagate to the past. So as sooner as you do, better you have future visibility of your cost. There are a couple of AWS partners though that can help you hetero tag that. Also, tags, they are case sensitive. So very important that you try to automate this as much as you can. If you put a dev with a capital D and another dev with a small d, those will be different tags so that it can be a little misleading when you're doing the reports. So make sure you have a consistent tagging, governance and policy around that. So let's do a quick demo over if you already have tags, okay? If you don't have, that's fine. You're going to start doing this, and maybe this is going to be useful for you to see what kind of governance you need to put in place. But let's do a quick example over how can you identify untagged cost and how to fix them, right? So if you go to Cost Explorer, that we just saw it, let's aim on the project tag, sorry. So I'm going to filter on my workloads what is untagged only, okay? And you see that this is, I'm going to put month to date, because as we already saw that I'm getting better over the past month over tagging. So I want to see what is untagged. Let me remove workspace again. This is a big chart that we have in the beginning of the month just to facilitate the overall analysis. And also any array utilization charge type that I have. Recruiting reservation fee, I will exclude that. Great. So I see here that over the past days, during this month, I have some usage under untagged resources here. So yeah, so I can pretty much see, okay, RDS was a problem, but it's fixed now. So most of the untagged now is on services like EC2 instances, ELB, EC2 others, so EBSs and everything, work docs. Okay, cool. So let's focus on, let's say I want to do tagging only for EC2. Okay. So EC2. Okay. So there is all the instances that I had that were untagged were fixed already. So there is nothing here to see as well. But so yesterday for this lab, I launched an instance untagged just to show here. But so Cost Explorer, the curve file takes a couple of can take 48 hours to update the data in there. So that's why it's not showing up here yet. But let's say if I want to look for resources that are not tagged. So I think the quickest way to do that is over the tag editor here. It's under resource group. So sorry if you missed that, on the top resource group, tag editor. So here you can do things like, I want to see for all regions. I want to see only for EC2, for example, instances. And I want to see, okay, for the ones that has not tagged project, or where project is an empty value. Because, someone can put a blank space in there and it will think it's a tagging, but it's not. So if I do a search, as I told you, yeah, so there is one instance. This is an instance that I launched yesterday. So you see that this instance was not tagged. So if I want to fix that, if you have several resources, you can do a bulk change here, manage tags, and I can add the tags that I want. So for example, if I know which project it is, I can say, oh, this is for a beta project, and I can fill it out. If you want to know who this resource is, you can look for this resource ID, see on IAM who launched that resources, which user launched it, so you know maybe which project it is. You can look for the account ID of the resource as well. So depending on how its tagging strategy work, you know what the value it is, and you can review and apply the tags, right? So that's a quick way. Another way, if you want to do some tag governance here, for the same thing, let's do EC2 instance, and let's say for the environment, I want to see all the environments that is tagged with dev. You see that I have two types of dev in there. I have dev with a small d and dev with a capital D. So if you want to have a consistent tagging policy there, you just search for it. It's going to show all the two EC2 instances that I have. They're not properly tagged. Just select them, manage tags, and again, you can pretty much update the dev value here. They also you don't need to change the project here because they're tagged for different projects. So you don't need to change the project one, just the dev one. And now if I do that, it will be fixed. So if I check the dev environment, they will all be consistent around the way I want them to be spelled. Of course, this is a manual. This is I'm just showing how you can quickly fix that depending on how big your environment. This is not going to be ideal. So there are other ways. So if you come back to the presentation, there are some partners and there's some automation you can put in place on your environment to make sure you have a consistent tagging policy. You're looking for three main problems to solve. So first, retro tag. So you need to have a consistent way to be able to tag the past, or at least see how you're fixing the past on this. What you're already running today on AWS. You need to have an automation for the future. So everything that you're launching now is already proper tagged. So again, if you're using infrastructure as a code, how you are already tagging by at launch, okay, and of course the governance. So how you make sure that the way that it's spelled, the mandatory tags, they're being filled as expected. So here you have some ways of doing this. The ones that I like the most. So Gorilla Stack, they have a way of doing this with CloudTrail. So there is a retro tag option on Gorilla Stack with CloudTrail where they will look the user who actually launched the resource and will fill it the tag based on that user. So that's a way of doing it. And they also have an auto tag policy that, again, based on the CloudTrail utilization, the CloudTrail information, so which user launched their resource, you will launch a Lambda function and will fill the tag according to that. So those are, it's open source, the links and everything will be sent with the materials afterwards, but that's, I think, a good way for automating and having a consistent tagging policy. We also have, Cloudability, Cloud Health, several partners there that can help you on this process with automation. And now finally, let's move to the Curve and Athena part of the lab. So if you already have a Curve file at your environment, you can try. So I'm going to run a couple of queries here to get some information that you may not be able to run at your environment. So if you can just start sharing the screen now. Great. So actually, we only have more 5 minutes, so I'm really sorry about not being able to show all these steps in a more paceful way. So I'm going to point out to some links on how you can establish the glue. So sorry, let's go back. So for the Curve file, it's saved on S3, right? So you have this file there with all the billing data, all the detailed data that you need. In order to run this on Athena, which is what we are trying to do to extract more information, you need to create a glue crawler, which will analyze, look for S3, all new data in there, and put on a Athena database. So basically, you're putting all the billing data that you see on the Curve file already on an Athena database, so you can query it later and connect to Tableau, connect to Kibana, whatever you want to do it. So I'm going to outline the steps on how to do that on Glue. We only have, I think, 5 or 6 minutes more, so I'll try to be very fast just to show you guys, but no worries, there is online documentation showing step by step how to do that. So if we go to AWS console here, go to Glue. So Glue will, again, it's the crawler that we need to start collecting the data from the Curve file. I already have my crawlers created, but if you want to do it yourself, add a crawler, give it a name. For example, data store, so you want to do with S3, where is your Curve file. You want to select exactly where it is, so my Curve file sits inside the account billing part of it. You need to put the proper prefix for the Curve file that you have. So mine, let me go back to the one that I already have here. So you can see it sits on this S3 bucket. So this is where the Curve file sits. It sits here with this prefix, or with these folders, if you wish. I don't want to add any additional data store. You need to create an IAM access role for this. I'm going to use one that I already have, but on your end, if you're doing this for the first time, make sure you are creating an access. So this will give Glue access to your S3 folder to access, read that file. You want to set this to run maybe every day, maybe, in the nights, maybe, let's say it's 9:30, for example. And you want to create a database. Already have a couple of databases created, but you can create a new one if you want. So I would just put one existing one. And when you do that and create, you're going to have a crawler in there. If you are able to follow the steps over this part, you just click on the crawler that you have and run it. So this will update and you'll create a table for you. If you already had that, it's going to only update the existing table, right? So after you did all this, we go to Athena, and this is the query editor. This is where you can run the queries on the Curve file and get some information. I have some queries that I want to share with you in these last minutes. I think I'm going to share the ones that I think are more the interesting ones. The first ones, top cost, those are things that you can get, top AWS cost by product, top AWS costs by tag. I think those are things you can get from Cost Explorer. So if you went all this further, better to use Cost Explorer instead of trying to go to all the steps. But if you want to check, for example, a very common thing, who used my arise, who used the reserved instance that you have. So all those queries I'll share afterwards with the documentation of the session. But if you run this query, you will be able to see, for example, for each instance ID, so exactly the resource ID that consumed the array, per hour, which instance ID consumed the RI, so you can do the proper chargeback at your company. So for example, if product A, business unit A bought an RI, but business unit B is actually consuming it, you'll be able to track this from here, and you'll be able to do your chargeback policy around that. You also have a way to do the chargeback by instance ID here. Again, all the queries I will share with you guys later. So if you run it, it's going to show not only per account ID, but also resource ID, who consumed that RI. You see, so for example, this is only for September, which I'm filtering here, so you can see each one of the instances that I have, who consumed them. The RRN is actually going to be showing who owned the RI and who actually consumed it. So you just compare, who bought it with who is using it, so you can do the proper chargeback on that level as well. And also, if you finally, if you're running spot instances, this is also a good way to track spot savings. So there's also a query that you can run it. Again, I will show all this with you afterwards. And you can play on your site, and that will enable you to see how much you're using a spot instance, how many hours we're using, how much it cost. And just to finalize, I think one of the queries that I like the most here is, do you remember when I showed you guys on Cost Explorer that report that compared how many hours you're running by how many costs you had, and you need to divide them? So if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to extract the data to a CSV and run on a report yourself, you can run here in Athena itself and get this information and connect this to a Tableau or whatever data visualization tool you use. So here you can see the usage, the cost, and the hourly rate that you're paying for all the instances and all the resources actually. So you see not only instances here, you see EBS, you see other things. So yeah, so I think this is just to show, if you want to go deep on EBS, on the curve file, the kind of things you can do here. Thank you guys for joining me today, and happy cost management.